gonna run up to her, surprise her. She didn't know what time we were coming. I'm so excited. So come on, let's meet our average Joe. Okay. She's got puppies. No, dogs.
How are you?
Hi, Jennifer.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kelly. How are you?
Fine. Sorry for all the barking.
Welcome to the Average Joe Cooking Show. I'm your host, Kelly Scott, and we're here with a very special guest, our Average Joe, Jennifer Schuck. Let's meet her. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. Thank you for welcoming us into your beautiful home. She was so gracious enough to just let us take a look around. She's got 2 beautiful dogs and a kitty cat around here somewhere. So she's really been great at welcoming us into her home. So let's talk a little bit about you and what you do and what your day is like. I know you're extremely busy. I know you're a teacher at one of the local area schools here. So tell us a little bit about your day.
I've been a teacher for 11 years now.
Okay, and you've always taught art?
I've taught art, yes.
Oh, how exciting. My little one loves art.
Yes.
So I'm sure the kids are quite rambunctious and, you know, high-spirited and all of that. So by the time you get home, are you like exhausted and don't want to cook, or are you like very happy to get home and ready to do something different?
I always want to cook. I mean, because I've always cooked suppers, and we've always sat down to suppers together as a family. So I'm just used to getting home first before my husband and getting a meal ready.
Okay, now does he help you cook at all?
No. When we first got married, but no, he doesn't. He gets home very late.
Okay. So now your kids are all grown at this point, but you do have one living at home. How much help is she in the kitchen?
She's not very much help. She does not know how to cook.
So you do this all by yourself every day?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You sound like me. And probably like the rest of our viewers, right? That's what makes us the Average Joe, is because we do all of this by ourselves and we have to get it done.
That's right.
So you don't have any training or anything like that. This is just something you love to do, right?
That's right. Well, actually, I started cooking when I was very young. I was maybe 10 years old when I started cooking.
That's right. Yes, we talked a little bit about that. So you have, what I think is really interesting about Jennifer is she started cooking in her family very, very young. And she, as a kid, she had this great insight to do what?
I wanted to collect recipes from all of my relatives before, they left us. And so I would go around whenever we visited them. I would write down recipes from my great aunts. How amazing
is that as a little child to have that vision and that perception and to want to have basically a legacy for your family. So that's what you're working on now, which is a cookbook. So I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. I think that's so cool to be doing that. So how far are you along in the cookbook?
I'm just about finished.
Okay.
I just have a few more chapters to do. Okay. I'm doing like poultry and beef and all those kind of recipes and appetizers, and so
and these are all family recipes.
They're family recipes, or they're friends of the family, so they're all relatives, and or there's some of my recipes too. That's
great. Now, do you have a name for the book? So, because we want to watch for it, we want to be looking for it for sure.
It's called Jennifer's Favorites.
Jennifer's Favorites. That's her cookbook. We still have some unfinished business with that, but I'm sure it'll be coming very soon, right? Okay. Now, you also have some kind of heritage things. I think your husband is from the Netherlands.
Yes, he is.
Okay. So, do you have some interesting recipes from there as well?
I do. I've recorded recipes from my mother-in-law and father-in-law before they passed away.
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that they passed.
But so I have a lot of her honey cake recipes and different
honey cake. That sounds interesting.
And her Dutch soup recipes and different things.
Great. Yeah, that's great. So what are you going to be preparing for us today?
Actually, it is a recipe from my aunt, Liz. She was quite a character. She lived in Hamilton, Ontario, and I used to visit her every Sunday when I went to school in Hamilton. And she would make this chicken paprika, which is paprika chicken. And her background is Croatian. She's Croatian.
Well, that's great. So that's what we're going to be making today. And we're going to go ahead and get things set up and move into the kitchen. We'll be right back after this. We're here in the kitchen of our average Joe, Jennifer Schuck, and we're getting ready to prepare this wonderful meal. I really can't wait. I'm so excited. During the break, that's all we've been talking about is how wonderful this food is gonna smell, and I can't wait to dig in. So let's hurry up and get started because I think we've got quite a bit of work to do. So what do you start with first?
Well, usually I start by putting a pot of water on the stove.
Okay, which we've already got boiling for the noodles.
Boiling. So I start with the onions first.
Okay.
And I peel these onions. Now, this is how I peel the onions, but I mean, everybody has their way of doing it.
This is true, and all we can stress is do it safely.
The way that you feel safe.
Right, the way that you feel safe doing it. Now, would you slice it or do you quarter it?
These are going to be diced.
Okay, diced. We were able to finish chopping up the fresh vegetables for the meal. Now we need to go ahead and move to the chicken. I know there's some things you want to do with the chicken. Do you want to dice it, or what are we going to do to prepare the chicken?
I'm just going to cut it into more serving sizes.
Okay. Yeah, because we've got some huge breast here.
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Now we're ready to begin cutting up the chicken. I think we're gonna trim a little bit of the fat off, although it's pretty lean, so this was a really great cut for the chicken breast. And then we're going to make it into smaller portions or single serving portions, because as you can see, this is a pretty healthy breast here. So how can I help?
Well, when I cut these in half, if you could just trim off the fat from this one and cut it into portions about this size. So about 3 pieces.
3 pieces. Okay, great. So are we finished with this piece?
We're finished with this.
Okay,
yes,
great.
for now.
So now we're all done with this. We'll go ahead and would you rinse it, or I know we've already rinsed it before, but do you rinse it again?
No.
Okay, no need to do that. So that's great. Let's go ahead, move this over, and then we'll get started at the stove. We're now ready to begin actually cooking this wonderful meal. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the onions, okay? So we're gonna use, to saute them, are we using the extra virgin olive oil?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started. Just let me know what you need.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and pour the onions in there. Now we pour all of them in there, which is the 3 yellow onions that we used, and we dice them up into pretty small pieces. Okay, and we're just gonna let those go ahead and start to saute a little bit. We're not gonna brown them. We just kind of want the water pulled out of them a little bit.
We just want them to get soft.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, sounds good.
So now I'm just gonna add this paprika right onto the onions.
Okay.
Like this.
And for this particular meal, we use 3 tablespoons of paprika, which, as you can see, is a quite healthy helping of it. And then you're just gonna
stir this all around.
Okay.
And so that the paprika is all with the onions.
It smells wonderful.
And just let that cook for about not even a minute.
Okay. Well, I know you used Hungarian sweet paprika.
Right.
I've never known that there were differences in the paprika because I don't cook with it a lot. I sprinkle it over deviled eggs like my mom used to do, right?
Right.
I put it a little bit in my fried chicken, but I don't use it as a base component to any meal. So do you notice a difference in the taste, or could I just use any paprika for this?
I prefer this one only because it's really got a lot of flavors to it.
Okay.
I mean, it's really pungent and it's a great paprika to use.
Okay.
So the sweet, there's also hot paprika, but I prefer to use the sweet for this recipe.
Okay. So that's very good to know. So we're gonna let these go ahead and cook down a little bit. We're gonna prepare the chicken and we'll be right back. What we're doing now is waiting for the chicken to brown on one side. They've only been cooking for, I guess, just under a minute. So at this point, what are we looking for with the chicken?
I just want it to be golden in color.
Okay.
And because basically it's going to be stewing along with the tomatoes and peppers for about a half hour.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy enough. So right now you're kind of just tossing it in the paprika and the onions, making sure that it's on both sides. As you can see, we were able to put everything into one very large, is this a saute pan or a fry pan or?
I would say it's a saute pan.
Okay. It smells wonderful, guys. I really wish you were here, and you should be jealous of me because I get to eat this. This is going to be absolutely delicious. So we're gonna let that go ahead and stew a little bit. Are you gonna place, okay, let's go ahead and place the tomatoes
We're gonna put the
in there.
tomatoes right in.
Okay.
Right on top, just like this. And you don't have to add any water to this, nothing, because all the juices from the chicken will make the sauce.
Well, that's great. That's great.
We just turn the temperature down a little and let it simmer.
Okay, she turned the temperature down to low.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna let it simmer. How long are we letting it simmer?
Half an hour.
A half an hour. Okay, so we're gonna let this simmer and then take in all this aromatic smells. I mean, she's got the onions in here, we've got the green peppers, the tomato, the paprika. It smells wonderful. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to taste it. So we'll be right back. Here, getting ready to put the final touches on the meal, which is the dumplings. So I'm not a baker kind of girl. So you're gonna have to really break this down for me like I'm a beginner baker, because I truly, truly am. That's my one confession. So anytime I see flour and like eggs and butter, I'm nervous because it tells me you're making something from scratch. So walk me through this. How do we start making the dumplings?
Well, we start out with 2 cups of all-purpose flour.
Okay.
And you put about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt into that.
Okay, and she just eyeballed that, guys.
Yes.
So you've got to be pretty experienced to eyeball salt in anything.
Now you can measure the salt,
Okay.
and and measure 1/4 teaspoon of salt
Okay.
into that, and then you get about 3 tablespoons of margarine or butter.
Okay, this looks like it's softened. Does the recipe call for softened butter?
It's softened right now, and you just cut this in. It doesn't matter if it's gotten a little soft. It can be hard or, cold.
Right.
It can also be a little bit soft, but not really soft.
Okay, here's an interesting question. At least I hope it's interesting. This little thing you're using, I don't have one of those. So what
Okay.
is it?
It is a pastry cutter, they call it.
Okay.
And this is what you cut margarine or butter or shortening into flour.
Okay, if I don't have one of those, what could I use?
You could use 2 knives.
2 knives? Okay.
Yes, and just cut with a knife.
Oh, interesting.
And I could show you how to do that.
Yes.
If you would like.
Could you? Because
Okay.
I don't put a lot of effort into baking, so
So you
okay.
could just take a knife and
Okay.
just cut it in like this too.
Oh,
if
I
you don't
gotcha.
have one of those.
Okay. Okay.
So that works just as well until it gets kind of like a grainy texture to it.
Okay.
As
Okay.
well.
Cool.
So once I've gotten that done, I take the 2 eggs and I beat them first.
In a separate bowl. I always wondered, sometimes you see people just put the eggs right into the flour and then they just start to kind of fold it in. And then you see some people who mix it up separately. Do you know why that is?
It depends on your recipe and what you're making.
Okay.
For the noodles, this is how you make them. You make a little well in the center.
Okay.
After you've cut on this margarine or butter, and you beat the egg just with a fork. You don't need to have a whisk or anything.
Okay, so she pulled the flour away from the center of the bowl to kind of make not a hole, but a well, as she said, and you can pretty much see it, how she's pulled the flour away and created a little bit of a crater that she's gonna pour the egg into the center of.
Now I'm gonna fold this over into there.
Okay.
And this is when it gets a little bit messy. You're actually gonna take your fingers and you're You're gonna work this egg all through the flour. What you're gonna do once all this egg is incorporated into the flour, and it's kind of looking flaky.
Yeah, like I can see that.
Good. Then I'm gonna add water to this, about 2 tablespoons.
Okay. Does it matter if it's room temperature, hot, or cold water?
It should be cold water.
Cold water, okay.
And with the fork, I'm just doing this. Now I'm gonna use my fingers to make this into a ball.
Okay. Now the water is going to make it less dry and more, what?
Sticky.
More sticky?
And dough-like.
Okay.
So now it's getting nice and sticky and dough-like.
Right.
And I'm going to just form that into a ball.
It's looking more like bread, like a bread, right?
It's starting to get like a pastry or a bread.
Okay,
right?
Pastry or bread. Well, we're going to let her go ahead and wash her hands off so we can get ready to dump these beautiful dumplings into the boiling water, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are now getting ready to make the wonderful dumplings that we just prepared. So now I noticed that we didn't make balls, which is what I kind of had in my mind, that we would kind of make little formed balls. So are these just going to be kind of rough, spooned out?
These are more Croatian style or European style dumpling.
Okay.
They're not like the traditional huge dumplings in the United States or North America.
Okay.
So they're actually called spätzle in some countries.
Spätzle?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's have some spätzle, shall we?
Yes, we will.
Now, I noticed that the water isn't really rumbling to a boil, so does it matter?
But it will be.
Oh, okay. So it does need to be at a rumbling boil prior to placing the dumplings inside, and she's just using 2 spoons to kind of section off a little bit of the dumpling dough, and then we're gonna just plop them into the water, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just grab a little and we pop it in there.
They look like they're about
Oops.
what would you say, like a 1/4 teaspoon size?
A teaspoon.
Okay, and they are sinking right to the bottom of the pan.
Right.
Okay.
And then when they rise, they float to the top. That's when they're ready.
Oh, interesting. See, you learn something every day. Some of these are already starting to float up, so we're gonna just go ahead and let Jennifer finish placing the rest of the mixture of dumplings into the pan while we get those boiling, and we'll be right back. We're on to the next phase of this delicious meal. I wish you guys could really smell it. This is the mixture of onions, tomato, and green peppers, and it looks like you could just eat it just like that. I mean, I really could just have, I don't know, a vegetable soup maybe.
Right.
It looks really good, but you're actually gonna take this and put it into a blender and puree it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that, because this is gonna turn into a sauce that she's actually going to pour over the finished meal. So the dumplings are done. We've got these over here just keeping warm,
yes.
Okay, until we finish the puree. So we're gonna go ahead, fold this into the blender and get that mixed up, and then on to the next phase. We are now ready to finish off the paprika chicken with dumplings. Now what we're getting ready to do, she blended the vegetables, which was the tomato, onion, and green pepper, and then she added a cup of the sour cream at the end, right? Which gave us this beautiful color. It's a quite thick sauce that she's gonna pour all over the chicken. So let's get ready. Now, I noticed, you know, that you put the sour cream in at the end. Now, if a person is not a fan of sour cream, which I'm usually not, I don't eat it on, like, you know, the typical things, the baked potato or anything like that. Could you do this without the sour cream?
You could probably just blend it and do it without the sour cream.
Okay, but we're gonna go ahead and serve the plates. We're gonna invite her wonderful husband in, who has been so gracious enough to be sitting in the background watching us prepare everything. And I know he's famished, so we're gonna go ahead, sit down, and let everyone taste your delicious meal. We are now joined by Jennifer's husband, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're absolutely famished. You've been watching us cook so vigorously in his kitchen all morning, but now we're done. And this is the great part, the part of the show that I think I love the most. where we actually get to taste the delicious meal that Jennifer has so graciously prepared for us today. Let's see. This is delicious. Absolutely delicious. We're gonna finish eating and we'll be right back. On today's show, we prepared chicken paprika and dumplings. To do that, we used about 5 pounds of deboned chicken breast and chicken thigh. We were able to get that deboned free of charge at our local grocery at the Delicatessen. We used 3 medium-sized yellow onions. We used 1 large tomato, and we used the entire thing. 1 large green bell pepper, 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 3 tablespoons of sweet Hungarian paprika, salt to taste, and a cup of your sour cream. Now to make the dumplings, we used 2 eggs, all-purpose flour, which I'm sure you have in your pantry, and then 3 tablespoons of margarine. The recipe calls for butter, but we used margarine just to add a little bit of health to it. And as you can see, all these are fresh vegetables, fresh onions, fresh chicken breast. Chicken was not frozen, it was freshly cut. And again, we topped it off with an Italian loaf bread here. This delicious meal serves about 6 to 8 people, and we did it all for about 18 bucks. So just remember, whether you're a top chef or
an average Joe, when you cook with love, your food will always be delicious.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode, where we were joined by a very special average Joe, Jennifer Schuck, and her wonderful family, who graciously welcomed us into their beautiful home today, and we prepared chicken paprika and dumplings. The meal was absolutely delicious, Jennifer. Thank you so much. So if you're interested in the recipe, please log on to our website at www.averagejoecookshow.com, and all that information will be there for you.